Welcome to Short and to the Point, a podcast from the Comeback in Awful Announcing. Here's your host, Jessica Kleinschmidt.
Hey guys, welcome back to Short and to the Point. Jessica Kleinschmidt here on the Comeback and Awful Announcing, an episode I'm very excited about. You're going to hear me say that with every episode because I'm excited about all the episodes. Before I get to that, I wanted to thank y'all for the patience. We essentially launched this podcast and I said deuces, I peaced out. I was dealing with a personal issue, so I'm so glad to have you guys back. That first episode, a little over a month ago, was with Jared Carabas over at DraftKings, formerly of Barstool Sports. I'm sure a lot of you baseball fans on social media have heard of him. So if you missed that episode, make sure to check that out. Episode number 2 today is with Will Blackmon, former NFL player turned media guy. He's also really into wine, which naturally I'm going to be into that. And our episode was really fun because I'm always curious about these athletes turned media professionals because it's a different transition. Sure, they're used to being in front of the camera, but it's a different platform. It's a different element. Imagine having to cram 10 years of knowledge of playing a sport into 15 seconds or a 30-minute show. It's virtually impossible. And that's what we ask of these guys. And they're filled to the brim with knowledge, but we make them tell us in a very quick hit. And that's a very difficult thing to do. But it's also really cool situation for me when some of these former baseball players come up to me and say, hey, can you help me with this? I'm curious about how this works because the media is literally different, a different ball game, a different animal. So I'm really excited about that. Will Blackmon also had the knowledge and the wherewithal, and he actually got to study Aaron Rodgers before he came on the scene when he was just Brett Favre's backup. Oh my gosh, imagine knowing what Aaron Rodgers was about back in the day. So we talked about what he learned from Aaron and what these New York Jets kids, these younger players, get to learn from Aaron Rodgers as well. And of course, he had a very illustrious career with the Green Bay Packers. And Will's also a big wine guy. One thing I'm really good at is drinking wine, but I'm even better at getting the hangovers when it comes to drinking the wine. So I asked Will, how do I not do that? And he walked me through some steps with that and then just kind of opened my eyes to wine, not just going out there and getting lit, even though that's part of the process too. And that was really interesting. So it was really cool to have that conversation with Will. And here it is. Thanks for stopping by, Will. I'm glad you're here because I wanted to pick your brain about a lot of stuff, specifically wine. But before we get into that, you're a bit removed from playing in the NFL. And I'm curious, from the time that you've played up until now, what are some of those differences you've noticed in the sport?
In the sport in general,
Mm-hmm.
well, I would say for sure it's younger. Like that's noticeable. And it's faster. The athletes are better. However, I would say the game in terms of X's and O's, it's less complicated. I feel like offenses and defenses are just trying to find ways to help their players play faster. And so I would say in terms of like if you're really prepared, then you should have success in the league today. I felt like back then it was way more complicated, more sophisticated offenses, more sophisticated defenses. But the teams that are still winning are the ones that are still doing that.
But it's interesting because from what I've heard about you, like that was never a factor. You would get to a new team and you were already prepared. So do you think you're just biased because it wasn't difficult for you?
Well, what's funny is coming into the NFL, I wasn't big. I had a high football IQ.
Yeah.
But that only gets you so far because there is film and people study you. And so you have to self-study and study your opponent at the same time. And it took me probably maybe 3 years to actually learn how to watch film because earlier, my first 2 years in Green Bay, like I wasn't making any plays. Now I made plays on special teams, but in terms of like defense, I wasn't making any plays on defense. And we had this guy on our team named Charles Woodson, some cornerback who happened to
Never heard of him.
Yeah, never heard of him. But I remember he wasn't. There were some times where he didn't practice, but he would still go out there Sunday and make plays. And I'm like, maybe he's like just that good. Now he was that good. So there was one night, Jessica, I came back to the facility. This is my third year. And I'm like, I'm going to figure out how to watch this film because I need to make some plays. And I go into the film room one night. It's like probably 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I walk in and Charles is in there and he's in there watching film. And I'm like, that's probably what it is. He would come back late at night and study film. And I was able to sit down with him and he showed me some things. And that right there was the light that went off in terms of like, hey man, this is a light that went on. That's like, hey, this is how you do it. You got to not only be a really good athlete, but also prepare.
And, when I hear the term watching film, I feel like there's so many different derivatives of that. Was there a specific way you approached it that worked for you better than maybe the standard watching film, like back from you were maybe in the combine and stuff like that?
Yeah, I would say when I first started watching film, I was just following the football, just like I would on TV, right? But I'm not really learning what's going on. So the biggest difference between, let's say, high school, college, and pro, once you get to the pros, it is all situational football. So what is the down and distance? Where is the offense aligned on the field? What is it 2 minutes before the end of the half? Is it 2 minutes before the end of the game? What's the formation? What's the personnel? There's so many factors that come into play that will help kind of reveal an answer to you. So it was really trying to understand situational football. And that's what really helped, because at the end of the day, yes, there's different offenses, there's different defenses, but in terms of the situation, everyone's trying to achieve the same thing. So there's kind of like some similarities across the board. So to answer your question in terms of like, it became easier for me because I did play multiple systems, and then I learned how to study and what to look for.
And I think of Kyle Shanahan's offense, and of course it's been adopted by a lot of head coaches, and it's intense and it's a lot. I would joke, I'm glad I don't have to learn a lot of these plays. How do you approach offenses like that? You don't want it without letting it intimidate you.
So Kyle Shanahan does a good job in terms of, he has a sophisticated run game. If you look at their offensive line, they're all athletic because they do a lot of moving with the stretch and the zones. But on defense, if you just have like really good gap integrity, you are able to set the edges. If you have athletic linebackers, you have a strong defensive tackle, and you're able to just take away those lanes, like that is a way that can help. But also, again, you need to have either a coach, and players that will understand that. So it is pretty complicated and cool. I had the pleasure of, I called an Air Force game this year for Fox, and you saw a lot of similarities of where the Shanahan family, the Kubiak family uses those kind of run schemes. So it's cool to see.
And you're calling younger, you're saying that the sport is younger. So you're calling Air Force games. What do you mean by younger? Because I feel like when it comes to football, there's obviously injury involved, and I cover baseball mostly. So our injury is a different type of injury compared to what football does. Do you think when you say younger, they're starting a little too early or getting scouted too early?
I would say, well, yeah, I mean, the development of the game is way more advanced from a, I guess, amateur level. With the 7-on-7, all these elite 11 quarterback leagues, like the development of quarterbacks is tremendous. That's why now you have two factors. One, the quarterbacks are ready to play, so they come in as rookies playing now. Also, too, it doesn't hurt you to financially to draft a quarterback high in the first round. Because back then, quarterbacks would sit because they didn't think they were ready. Also, quarterbacks cost a lot when you get one in the first round. So I would say developmental skill-wise is huge. But I mean by the game is younger is simple, like literally, like age-wise. It's like once you hit 30 years old, if you're not a perennial Pro Bowler or a consistent starter, it's like, good luck, man. Like it's going to be hard for you.
Yeah, and how do you kind of approach that? You knew that going into playing, right? And you were lucky enough to have pretty much a pretty long career, all things considered. So when you compare how you were able to continue compared to like what I couldn't imagine what the average expectancy is for the average player.
Yeah, I Jessica, when I went into the NFL, I didn't even think of when it would end. I didn't think of any age. I didn't think of anything. I was just so excited to be in the NFL. I was the typical, like, I was a fan. I collected cards. I collected jerseys. I collected figurines. I played all the Maddens. Like, I was a diehard football fan. So for me to even just to get a helmet, like,
Yeah.
that's all I was excited about. I didn't care about anything else. I was just excited to be in the NFL. And that was the cool part for me. And sure, like when I got older, when I was in my, mid to late 20s, you start seeing that. I saw a lot of guys who were in their 30s who bodies weren't holding up, or maybe they were cap casualty, or, I was part of, bringing in, as I was a younger guy, and other guys got moved that were older. So you see it and you understand the system.
And so you collected all this memorabilia, and I feel like when you collect memorabilia and then you actually play in the league, what's the best piece of memorabilia that you own?
Gosh. You know what? I have hold on.
Okay.
Let me grab it. I got my favorite player of all time. My favorite player of all time is Barry Sanders. And I have this starting lineup
Oh, wow.
right here of Barry Sanders. So this is, I saw him not in person, but watched him on TV when I was about 4 years old. And when I saw Barry Sanders, I was like, all right, like that's what I want to do. I want to play. I want to do that. So
do you know how rare it is?
No, I don't know. So I collected, but I wasn't like big on value. I don't have like all the stats and numbers, all that stuff. I just collected as in like, I want it, I'm not letting it go. So I was a hoarder.
Oh, I same. Tell me a little bit about you're calling games now. And I'm always curious when a player goes from playing to working in the media, it's always an interesting transition. What were some of those surprises for you?
Well, going into TV, I would say the challenging part is when you're in studio, because everything's produced. You have a limited amount of time. You got to get to your talking points. You can't really elaborate, elaborate on what you really want to say, because you don't have that much time, or the topic doesn't allow you to do that. The beauty of calling games is I can do all that. Like, I'm pretty much doing everything but playing. And it's really cool because leading up to the week or leading up to the game, I'm preparing as if I am playing. So it's really cool to be up there, see it, and literally you're just talking football. And for me, that's what I do at home. I watch the game when we talk football. And so that's what's fun for me, to travel, go to these stadiums, meet these players, meet these coaches, and you're watching football. It's super cool. That right there for me I felt alive doing that.
Oh, that's great. And do you think it was a seamless transition for the most part, or were there challenges involved?
I wouldn't say it was seamless. Let me say this. It was seamless in terms of the actual content and what to say and what to talk about. But you have to learn all the logistics of, production and being on camera. And, I'm pretty low key and chill in person. So my regular talking voice is even lower when I'm on camera. So even just trying to be a bigger personality of myself, because it was hard for me to like be big, but because I'm like, that's not me. I want to be myself. Well, then I had a guy say, well, you can be yourself, just be a bigger version of yourself. And so, and then the things that do, I would say, works across the board is just being a good teammate, just being on the same page with your play-by-play guy, you two are having fun, or even in media, just having no ego and let's just all have fun. Let's all put on a really good show with the producers, the directors, the camera, whatever you want, everybody, let's together like put on a good show. And so that right there was seamless. That's what I love. And
what's interesting is being yourself on camera is the challenge that I've noticed with a lot of former athletes, because they walk in, say when I first started, you put a camera in front of my face, I'm going to try to be Barbara Walters or something crazy.
Exactly.
And the moment you're just yourself, because they know your credentials. They probably put a little graphic up there saying this is why he knows what he's talking about. So I think it's almost better to know that you are an extension of the players. I think it's such a beautiful thing without being too analytical. You have to embrace the numbers because unfortunately these
Right.
guys are defined by numbers, but I think it's important to embrace the fact that you are also a human being who just happens to play football and did it for a long time.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and when these networks bring you on, they already have an idea of who they're looking for.
Right.
And so I can go in there and I can be super articulate, sit up straight and with all these things, and they're like, okay, you're good, but we've seen it. You know what I'm saying? We've seen it before. And so that's where I kept making adjustments. And the hardest thing for me is I could watch myself in football. I can't watch myself on camera. And so I had to get used to having to critique and evaluate myself on camera. And that's why I was like, look, I'm just going to just be me, So even when I do like public speaking or if I'm doing anything in the wine space or whatever, I talk just like I talk to my homeboys because it's nowadays people want the authentic, want the organic stuff.
I agree. And it's funny that you said that because when I hear my voice, if we're in the elevator at the Coliseum and I hear my voice, I'm like, oh, who's this annoying girl? And it's me. So it's kind of, I get it. It's totally understandable. And so when it comes to public speaking, what is your goal when it comes to speaking at some of these functions?
Yeah, I just talked about that the other day with someone about public speaking, because we were talking about nerves because I just did I did some show in LA the other day and everyone's like, are you nervous? I was like, you know what? I do get nervous. First of all, I'm not nervous because I'm prepared, and then I get super nervous, and then right before I just say F it, like let's go. And I'm the same thing if I do public speaking. The main thing that I make sure that I do is I make sure I find a way to connect with the audience, connect with the listeners. So I may have a speech. I would say 9 to 10 times I don't have a speech. I find out who the audience is. I find out what are we trying to accomplish. I'll have some bullet points that I'll keep, either mental bullet points or I might have some, written down somewhere. And I just speak from the heart. That's the main thing, because I can go up there and give a really cool presidential speech that's written down, and there'll probably be a lot of good information in there. But I can tell if I'm connecting or not connecting with somebody. You might get like head nods, you might get people listening, you might get smiles. Like I can read the room pretty good. So I always try to.
What happens if you don't get any reaction?
I get reaction.
Okay. All right. There you go.
Well, I'm good at reading okay, I've had situations like that earlier. That's why I made those adjustments where I was like, well, and also I put myself in the seat. Like, what kind of speaker do I like? I like ones that connect and that really understand what we need and what we're looking for. And so I'm confident and I believe in what I can do, but I do approach every speaking engagement with putting myself in their shoes first. If I was them, what would I want to hear? That's how I look at it.
Yeah, you have to know the consumer and know your audience. It's definitely very important. You're right. There's so much content out there. You have to be different, which usually just means being yourself.
Yeah, because when I get up there, I never look at it like, oh, it's about me. I'm gonna go up there and give this badass speech, and I'm just gonna knock it apart. I want people to like take something. Like I hope that whatever I said, there was something in there that you were like, okay, I like what he said there, or man, I can relate. Oh, I can connect. Oh man, it's not just me. He dealt with this too. So I'm big on, I guess speaking from the heart, being vulnerable, talking about adversity, and then just it's all good, if you are feeling a certain way. So that's how I roll.
I agree. Was there ever a moment where you were on the other side of that? Somebody was talking to you and you said, I can relate to that. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. And it's usually, when you deal with any kind of hardships or anything tough, someone asked me recently, like, hey, what's the one word you can describe yourself? And I'm like, gosh, I don't even know. But I thought about just my life in general. And I was like, you know what? I would say resilient. Like I can deal with a lot of stuff and still be able to like overcome it and go about my day in my life. So I'll say pretty resilient. So I like to share that and hopefully help everyone else become resilient as well.
We talk about resiliency, and it's such a beautiful attribute to your career. And I mean, athletes get injured, it's kind of death taxes, and it happens. But it feels like your injury list was pretty intense. And there was also a point where your phone wasn't ringing. And how do you deal with that? How do you manage that? What keeps you going? Because you could have easily said, I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I had 9 surgeries in 12 years when I played. And I would say the biggest thing is like I was very fortunate to have a lot of support from my family. I mean, my wife she's a machine in terms of like, all right, like on to the next, never complain, never why me or what's going on. It was like, hey, like let's go, get up, go train, go get your mind right, and what have you. So yeah, I was fortunate to have that, and then I always kept in mind like I got this far, like for a reason. So like this can't be it. But yeah, like you mentioned, me when I didn't get a phone call, there was I tell people in the NFL, it is you have huge triumph and you have major trials. Like it is up and down, up and down. Like, okay, I get drafted, like hooray. And then first day of training camp, mini camp, I break my foot, boom. Then I come back and I'm starting, and then I break my foot, boom. And then I score a touchdown, then I have another foot break, boom. I go I get released from the Packers. They go win the Super Bowl. And then I get signed by the Giants and we win the Super Bowl. And then after we win the Super Bowl, I don't get signed the next year. The whole 2012, not one phone call. So that's why it really messes us up mentally in terms of like what is going on. And if you don't have support from friends or whatever your faith is or family, like it's hard. So I was fortunate to have support in all 3 phases that helped me keep going. And so I was happy to have people around me where they were like, there's a solution, there's a way we can fix your body and get you help. And so
that's good. And when it comes to resiliency, and I feel like it's a lot of trying to be even keeled about a lot of things, which is when I see an athlete who's staying neutral as much as possible, whether he's up and down, I feel like he's a game changer. Did you figure that out earlier in your career that's important? And I know you have to ride the highs and deal with the lows, but you also have to kind of maintain being in the middle as well.
Yeah, that's just my temperament. I was always neutral.
That's good.
You never really knew if I was super excited or if I was dealing with something crazy. Like I was very, very neutral. I had fun. I'm a silly person. I laugh and joke a lot. I laugh and joke a lot. And yeah, I was always neutral. I was always chilling, man. I was always thinking of ways to help, I guess, other people. And for me, that's the best medicine when you are dealing with stuff. It's like, man, how can I help somebody else? How can I be of service to someone else? So yeah, that is me. I'm pretty level-headed. So it's like good and bad because people don't know, like, man, is he okay?
Right.
Or they're trying to figure me out.
Yeah. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about, you have a Packers helmet behind you. You definitely spent some time there. And I did a lot of coverage of Aaron Rodgers, of course, this offseason because of where he was going to end up. And I've never met him, but I've definitely been intrigued by him and the way that he's able to kind of be an extension, like an extra coach with his new team now. What was he like as your play caller?
Aaron was awesome. Speaking of seamless transition, I had Favre my first 2 years in Green Bay, but we had Favre, and then we got to see Aaron Rodgers every day in practice. So we knew, like, going into games that if your starter, we knew most of your starters weren't better than a backup. Was not better than a backup. So when we moved on from Favre and got Aaron, we felt awesome because he was just an unbelievable talent, or is an unbelievable talent. Probably the best quarterback I have seen live in person in terms of what he can do. And just as a person, man, he's super cool. He's fun. He's funny. He's witty. He has that dry humor, which I get. I understand that it drives people nuts because that's how I am. So we get each other, and I think Colin Cowherd is the one who said, we're friends because he's a Cal guy, Cal Berkeley, and I'm a BC guy. So I guess I don't know. I guess we get each other. So yeah, just overall as a player, like the cool thing about him is I always, when I evaluate a quarterback, we can look at the arm, we can look at his smarts or whatever it is, but when I'm in the huddle and we need something, we need help, like, can I look at that guy and be like, he got us?
Mm-hmm.
And Aaron is one of those quarterbacks where you look at him, you're like, he's going to do something eventually. I think that's the frustrating thing when people watch, some Green Bay games is that, eventually he'll hopefully like make a play. And when he doesn't, it's like, oh man, now they want to throw it all on him. But it's in there somewhere. Again, the Jets don't make this type of investment if they didn't believe like he was, one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. Like he hasn't slowed down. That's what's funny about all these narratives.
Yeah, and I thought it was really cool that the owner himself said, whatever we got to do to get Aaron, I'm down. And I really appreciated that. When it comes to wine, I picture you with wine, and I live in Oakland. I definitely covered Charles Woodson and everything that he's done since he's retired. He's a wine guy. Why wine?
Why wine? You know what? The cool thing about wine, like for me, is very similar to how I fall in love with the game of football. Like I remember growing up, my father would have all these old school like VHS film tapes, and most of them had like Barry Sanders on it, and I would watch those. So I really grew up like watching those who paved the way of the game. Got to see like the history and the stories. I know the composer Sam Spence, Steve Sables, the producer, the owner of NFL Films, John Facenda, that was his voice. The autumn wind is a pirate. See, you're in Oakland, you should know that stuff.
Yeah. Sure do.
And so I just really love the history and the stories of football. And for wine, it was the same way. Like, yes, people, like you have the LeBrons having fun with like really expensive wines and all that stuff. But I didn't care so much about the lifestyle. I love the stories. I love the viticulture, the history, the climate, geography, like all those things that tell a story that go into that bottle or glass. Like that for me was really fascinating, which made me want to keep learning and study more about wine.
So yeah, just like your NFL, preparing for what you needed to do with wine. I love that. So what wine should I drink to stop giving me hangovers? Because it's becoming a problem.
Well, I would say number one, make sure you are well hydrated.
Okay, well, you're speaking of the choir today of all days, but yes.
Yeah. Make sure you are well hydrated. And the other thing I would say is maybe aim for wines with less alcohol, because alcohol, sugar, and dehydration is a really bad combination. And maybe some with moderate tannins. Tannins is the dry, but I'm telling everyone else, the tannins are the dry feeling in the mouth. So if you bit like the skin of a red grape or any grape, that's the bitterness feeling. So yeah, lower alcohol. So anything under maybe 13%, I would say. And then, but make sure you are well hydrated.
Before I let you go, this is an important question. You go wine tasting and you see people who maybe have a lot of experience with wine, me kind of in the middle, and then there's everybody else. Who's like the person that you look at and say, I need to teach them something because they're struggling right now? Because sometimes, honestly, I like to go wine tasting because I like to take a cute Instagram photo. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. There you go. You know what's hard? One of my best skills, this is me bragging again, is I'm great at minding my own business.
Good for you.
I am so oblivious, and I mind my business, especially when someone goes wine tasting. I'm not gonna walk over and be like, hey, da da da, this, that, and the third. And now, if they have questions, then I'm all in.
Right.
I would say if I did have like one small pet peeve. Hold on. Oh, I have something. A wine glass suitcase.
Okay. As one does, of course. Yes.
Yeah, there's a company called it's called Fly with Wine, but
Right.
see that? It's really cool.
Oh, that's
So
cute.
I get super fancy smashes.
Dang, that's like high tech.
This is really so that I can travel my own glasses. Like sometimes hotels don't have like nice glasses.
I agree. I do know that. Like when they serve you wine on an airplane, it's like this isn't right.
So
I know what kind of glass you should serve it in. It's not a plastic one. Thank you.
You know what's wild? I'm going to bring this on board next time. And if I'm sitting up first class or wherever I get wine, I'm going to whip my own glass. So one of my pet peeves is this.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
People hold it by the bowl. Yeah, they hold it by the bowl.
You got to do the stem, right?
Yeah, stem all day. You don't have to do pinky up. I don't do that. Stem.
Okay.
That's one of my. Now the only acceptable would be, let's say if your wine is too cold, then yeah, you can warm it up with your hands. But it's just barbaric when people just grab it like this.
Speaking of barbaric, I'm not sure if this is barbaric. I did do like a small little wine tasting. I couldn't for the life of me forget what like kind of wine it was. She's like, but when you're done with the wine bottle and you haven't finished it, you can put it in the fridge. Is that okay?
Like what varietal? White?
I believe it was a red wine because white wine, I can see it, and like rosé, sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that. I don't put them back in the fridge. I probably got about 30 wine bottles right here.
Have you ever not finished a bottle of wine?
Yeah.
Okay.
I usually never finish bottles of wines.
Okay.
I finish champagne though.
Obviously, when you're not a monster.
I got Charles Woodson's whiskey here. See that? Yeah. Sorry, I know.
Too soon. Unless it's Gatorade, not interested right now. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. This is fun.
Yeah, all good. Thank you.
That was my convo with Will Blackmon. We thank him so much for his time. I told you all the elements: football, media, wine. Those are three of my literal favorite things. So what is better than that? Thank you for listening to Short and to the Point. Jessica Kleinschmidt here. As always, thank you, my producer, Phil. He's absolutely killing it, making me look good. He's like the tape that holds a Spirit Airlines plane together. I'm so very thankful for him. And make sure you like and subscribe to our podcast wherever podcasts are available. And then follow us on YouTube and subscribe at The Comeback TCB.
Want even more short and to the point? Follow Jessica at KleinschmidtJD and head over to thecomeback.com and awfulannouncing.com.